If you're building red in Lorwyn Eclipsed Limited, this is the video for you. Hi, I'm Michael from Michael the Gathering. If you've opened up a beautiful, shiny copy of a Spine Rock Tyrant, and you really just want to force red, especially if you're playing in Pick 2, where forcing is absolutely the name of the game, then this is the video for you. Every color in Lorwyn Limited comes with 2 supported color pairings and 2 unsupported color pairings. Now, what this really means is that there are 2 tribally focused color pairings and 2 just mechanically focused color pairings. Every color pairing has a thing to do in Lorwyn Limited. It's just maybe a little bit less obvious. In red, the tribal color pairings are red-black goblins and red-blue elementals. Now, these have very different levels of complexity, so we'll start with the simple one, goblins. As a supported color pairing, goblins gets a multicolored uncommon draft signpost card in Boggart Cursecrafter. This is a 2-mana 2/3 with Death Touch, and whenever a goblin you control dies, another goblin, it deals 1 damage to an opponent. Very good for sacrificing a whole bunch of stuff and then pushing through a little bit of pressure at the end of the game where this will forcibly trade off with something. Every color pairing has 2 hybrid enablers, which are sorted in a particular way based on whether or not it's a supported color pairing. Goblins gets to have Eclipsed Boggart at uncommon, a 2/3 for Burr, that's 3 hybrid black or red mana, that on entering digs for a goblin, a mountain, or a swamp card, which is remarkably close to when it enters draw a card for a black or red hybrid card. Kind of a big deal for black and red in Limited. This is all assuming that you have built your deck correctly and goblins, swamps, and mountains make up 80% of your deck. At common, black-red gets Chaos Spewer, a 5/4 for 2 and a burr with when it enters you may pay 2 or blight 2. And this is really telling because you don't realistically ever want to be upcasting this and getting just a vanilla 5-mana 5/4. This is a 3-mana 5/4 that also lets you essentially sacrifice a goblin token on entering. Sometimes there are going to be situations where you want to just have the -1/-1 counters on something, like you've played a weird tree folky deck, but somehow you're still in black-red. But realistically, a lot of the goblin game plan is getting these small 1/1 goblins and just dumping towers of -1/-1 counters on them. It's, I play a 1/1 goblin and I blight 7 on it. Because you want to enable things like Boggart Mischief, an uncommon black goblin enchantment, which is essentially a goblin Bastion of Remembrance, being 2 and a black for whenever a goblin creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And importantly, when it enters, you may blight 1. When you do, make 2 1/1 black and red goblin creature tokens. Wait. Yes, it's 2. I said 2 tokens in my segment on the white-blue merfolk, and I had to be corrected by a commenter, and now I am justifiably paranoid at my own reading abilities. Boggart Mischief is a fantastic card that lets you enter, trigger it, and then get 2 additional tokens, or just put a -1/-1 counter onto your Boggart Cursecrafter that you weren't going to be attacking or blocking with anyway, and get 2 additional rectangles with your Bastion of Remembrance, which historically was pretty good. Similarly, look out for a card like Sour Red Auntie, a red uncommon, 4-mana 4/3 that, look, we all let ourselves go a bit and developed some new hobbies during lockdown, that when it enters you may blight 2. If you do, create 2 1/1 goblin creature tokens. So essentially this is a 4-mana 2/1 with 2 1/1s, but also you can have this be a 4-mana 4/3 sacrifice a goblin creature token to create 2 additional goblin creature tokens, which is pretty cracked, all things considered. Alongside Sourbread Auntie, if you're drafting black-red from a very open red lane, you're going to pick up, hopefully, a relatively late copy of Elder Auntie in the common slot. This is going to be very, very helpful for just keeping your entire deck working together. As a 3-mana 2/2 and a 1/1, both of which are goblins, it's going to be a mainstay in your deck, and you're going to be happy to have as many copy of these as you can reasonably draft. Slightly increasing in complexity, we have red-green. This is a bit of a weird deck where the uncommon hybrid enabler Noggle Robber is not tribally important and is actually probably more relevant to the green-blue Vivid deck, which, if you're playing in green-red, realistically, you're going to be interested in a lot of those cards anyway. Green-red-blue is kind of a sub-archetype entirely worth building around, with the blue-red uncommon signpost, which we will get to in the future, but also Noggle Robber being a card that you can just play for either all red or all green mana, and giving you an extra color for your Vivid effects. Gangly Stompling is a 4/2 changeling for turn and rogue with trample that's just easily the most meh of the hybrid changelings, but importantly, it hits some breakpoints for the rest of the cards in the red-green deck specifically. Example, Boldwyr Aggressor is a 2/5 giant for 5 mana with double strike that gives all of your other giants double strike. So obviously if you have a Gangly Stompling in play, suddenly this is a 4/2 trample double striker, and this is a lot more threatening than it seemed at first glance. Also, because red-green is the color pairing of giants, despite the fact that that has not at all been acknowledged by WotC, Pummeler for Hire is a 5 mana 4/4 in green with Vigilance, Reach, and Ward 2, and when it enters, you gain X life, where X is the highest power among giants you control, which will almost always be 4, unless you have some sort of absolutely cracked rare already on the board. Just an absolutely fine card to play completely by itself, and also happens to be a giant for a bunch of extremely relevant tribal synergies. If you're drafting red-green from a very open red lane, things are a little bit rough, but red in Lorwyn Eclipsed is actually pretty slow, all things considered, and you're going to have plenty of large cards like Brambleback Root. This is a 3 mana 4/5 that enters as a 2/3 that can remove counters from itself to attack very, very aggressively, forcing an opponent to not be able to block with their best defensive options, and also being just generally better than you expected to be as long as you can get those giant tribal effects like Boldwyr Aggressor. On the next rung up of the ladder of complexity are blue-red elementals. This is the other red tribally supported color type, which it doesn't really feel like this is probably the least supported of the supported color pairings, but they do get Eclipsed Flamekin, a 1/4 for 1 that's 2 blue or red hybrid mana, which on entering lets you dig for an elemental island or mountain. And they get Flaring Cinder, a 3/2, once again for 1 with when it enters and whenever you cast a spell with mana 4 or greater, you may discard a card if you do draw a card. This is the synergy for elementals. It's kind of elemental tribal, but it's also kind of spells you cast with mana value 4 or greater. But more importantly, a card that is both of these things is the blue-red uncommon signpost Twin Flame Travelers. The entire blue-red elemental deck is based around whether or not you can draft this card and then get it online and keep it on the board. Because this is a 4 mana 3/3 flyer, just a solid attacking card in draft, with if a triggered ability of another elemental you control triggers, it triggers again. Now, this is absolutely fantastic, obviously, with the hybrid elementals that we've already seen, but it doesn't stop there. You can pick up Flamekin Guildweaver at common, a 4 mana 4/3 with Trampler that says when it enters, create a treasure token, becoming incredible if you're doubling that effect to getting multiple treasure tokens, making this a net 2 mana 4/3 Trampler, or Rhymekin Recluse, a 3 mana 3/2 Mana War that is, it enters, it returns up to one other target creature to its owner's hand, which is going to completely annihilate people if you cast this with an uncommon trigger doubler on the board. Now, if you're drafting blue-red from a very open red lane, hopefully it means that you can get copies of Soulbright Seeker relatively easily. This is a solid early game card if you can get multiple copies of it. Playing this as a 1 mana 2/1 that is eventually going to start accelerating you is particularly good if you're going to cast it by beholding an additional copy of itself. But while it is a very, very solid card on its own, it is kind of doing that to make up for the fact that it doesn't really fit into the rest of the game plan very much. And at the peak of red complexity is probably my favorite color pairing of the entire set. Red-white is the color pairing of really weird, slow, blighty counter removal control effects, which for red-white is incredibly weird, unless you're playing Jeskai in standard. Yes, Feisty Spikeling is a 2/1 on your turn, first strike, changeling for 1 and a We're gonna say this one backwards and say Whir, which is a white-red hybrid mana, which is a really solid aggressive card and is gonna blow people out with even the smallest amount of combat trick support. But red-white really shines when you look at Hovel Hurler, which is a 5 mana 6/7 that enters as a 4/5 for 3 and 2 Whir that can then activate itself to grow bigger and also make other creatures flying, making your deck just start really annihilating people incredibly quickly. But more importantly, red-white is the best home for Lasting Tarfire. This is a mono-red enchantment at uncommon for 2 mana that says at the beginning of each end step, if you put a counter on a creature this turn, this enchantment deals 2 damage to each opponent. This is any counter on any creature. So if you're putting -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures, great. More importantly, if you're playing creatures that enter with -1/-1 counters on themselves, this is going to extremely reliably be turned on. And you're going to get that with white cards like Moonlit Lamenter, a 3 mana 2/5 that enters with 1 -1/-1 counter on it that you can remove to then draw a card. If you can get cards like this on the board, keep your board stabilized and safe, and just have all of the copies of Lasting Tarfire that nobody else wants, you're going to start running people over and they're going to have no idea how to interact with you. And if you're drafting this deck from a very open red lane, you're going to have more access to blighting creatures. Look out for things at common like Gristle Glutton. This is a 2 mana 1/3 goblin that the goblins deck doesn't really want because it's a 2 mana 1/3, but it has tap, blight 1, discard a card, draw a card. Again, not a really aggressive effect here, and because it's only blight 1, the deck that wants to get all of its value out of blight 7ing a 1/1 token isn't really going to see the value in this. But if this is tap, put a counter on your Moonlit Lamenter so that later you can draw a card, and also now you get to rummage, we see the potential. This is the value of this deck, and also this can be activated at instant speed to put a -1/-1 counter on your opponent's stuff at the end of their second main phase, meaning that you get to activate Lasting Tarfire on your opponent's turn. That's all for red. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for the patience for those of you who have been waiting for the rest of these videos to come out. If you're new to the channel, you enjoyed the video, or it helped you in any way, please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, as always, and I will see you in the next one, probably later this afternoon.